your most important day is the day that you don't want to be there. Everybody works hard when they feel like working hard. Everybody works hard when they're having a good day, when they're getting results, especially instant results. But the best figure out a way to work hard when they didn't feel like working hard.
Welcome to Rainmakers. I'm Lauren Anderson. Today, I am joined by Peter Vidmar. Peter is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. He was a member of the United States men's national gymnastics team and won gold in the team final and pommel horse and won a silver in the individual all-around in the 1984 Olympics. Peter is currently a VP of Wealth Strategy at Northern Trust. Peter Vidmar, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, you have had such a unique career journey. Not many people can say they scored a perfect 10 on an Olympic event. Tell us a little bit about your story.
I grew up in Southern California, in Los Angeles. I'm the youngest of 6 children. My father was a real inspiration to me. He did gymnastics when he was in high school, but I never saw him do gymnastics because my father contracted polio when he was 27 years old, and that left him physically challenged with a number of muscles in his body that didn't work. And so my father labored to walk with a big limp and had some other physical challenges. But my dad always had a smile on his face. I never saw him complain about what everybody else called a handicap. And because of that, he taught me through his example how to endure hard things with a smile. And I trained with a coach who was a 2-time Olympian who knew what it would take to reach that level. And so workouts were hard, even at a young age, but I knew I couldn't complain because I had to go home to John Vidmar every night, a man that didn't complain. And so that helped me, I think, to become a little tougher and to be able to endure some of the challenging workouts. I made the U.S. men's team when I was actually a junior in high school, which in men's gymnastics, that's kind of unusual. And so I competed for the U.S. team starting rather early. I then went on to UCLA to compete for the UCLA men's gymnastics team and competed for them for 4 years. And our team and myself were able to win a number of NCAA titles. And I ended up making 2 Olympic teams. 1980, I was on the U.S. Olympic team. We had to boycott those games because of a war in Afghanistan with the Soviet Union. The U.S. President Jimmy Carter, said that he did not want to send the U.S. team to Russia. So we didn't compete in those, even though I made the team.
Wow.
4 years later, I made the team. 4 years later, I made the team, and we competed in Los Angeles, in my home city and in my home court. So that was great. And 2 of my teammates on the Olympic team were also my teammates on the UCLA team. I met my wife at UCLA. She was the captain of the women's gymnastics team at UCLA. And so we're loyal to our school, loyal Bruins, and we follow our sports teams. We have 5 children, 11 grandchildren. So we all stay involved and engaged in sports and have a lot of fun. And I done a bunch of Ironman races with my sons. And so I've enjoyed trying to stay active as I age. I went about speaking at corporate events after the Olympics with no intentions to do that. My degree's in economics, and I was planning to go into the financial world. And for about 35 years, I did that. And then I went off to Australia for 3 years at the end of my career, and I ran a mission for my church. And then after that, I came back and retired for just a few years, and now I'm in banking right now. So I'm having a lot of fun doing what I probably would have done when I graduated from college many years ago. That's my story.
I love that. I love how you've come full circle.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so a lot of our listeners are young professionals just starting out. And to be honest, at a time it kind of feels daunting. I love how you mentioned about how the 1980 Olympics were boycotted. I think it's a good example that there have been difficult times in the past.
Yeah.
So I would love to just know what you would tell someone who is facing so much uncertainty when they are trying to choose a career, get started.
Well, I think along any path, we're going to face disappointment. Some of those disappointments are mistakes that we make ourselves, our own mistakes, our own foolishness, or our own lack of forethought, things like that. Other mistakes, things that just happen to us that aren't our fault, or that happen because someone else does something to us that's maybe we feel unjust and all. We can't control a lot of those things, but what we can control is how we respond to the setbacks that we face and the challenges that we face. For example, I was competing once on the World Championships in Budapest, Hungary, and going into the finals on the horizontal bar, I was in second place, and the guy that was in front of me, who was in first place, made a mistake. So all I had to do was make my routine successfully. I'd become the world champion. I had a skill that was very challenging that I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it, but I decided to go for it, and I failed. And I was devastated. And yet, I remember walking back from the arena to the hotel, just disappointed and devastated. And I remember making that commitment that I would never make that mistake again. I had been taking that skill that I failed on, I'd been taking it for granted. I didn't train it appropriately. So for the next 6 months,
Oh,
I focused on that skill. Almost at the end of almost every workout, I do a little bit extra of that skill. I really was able to somewhat perfect it, and I performed that same skill in that same routine at the Olympic Games 6 months later, and I scored a perfect 10. And
wow.
so looking back, I can say, I'm so glad I had the setback. I'm so glad I had that mistake, that I experienced that, because it taught me to really focus in on those things I needed to work on to really get better. Our careers may not always go perfectly, and we have setbacks and struggles. What we can control is our response to those setbacks. What am I going to do? Now that I've fallen off the high bar, what am I going to do? Now that I had that setback in my job, what am I going to do? And so while we can't control the past, we can control our efforts for the future. And I think that's an important message that I learned in sport that can help me in a career, or anybody in a career.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think it's very true that our setbacks often make us focus,
Yeah.
as you said, and to improve later. So, if you could go back and whisper something in your ear,
Mhm.
like what advice would you give yourself besides investing in video? Give
My
yourself.
wife is very good at teaching our children when they have struggles and such. This too shall pass. In other
Yeah.
words, don't worry. It's not the end of the world, and you can overcome these challenges. And that's not easy in the moment, but I think looking back, we realize it did pass, right? All of our big
Yeah.
struggles sometimes have passed. Now, there's some things that don't pass away. My father, who suffered from polio, knew that he was never going to get the strength in his leg back. That was permanent, and he had to accept that. And so he had to make decisions based on his condition that he knew wouldn't change, but saying, what can I do moving forward? And he was able to have a successful business career and raise 6 children, and it was a great example to his family in the midst of his challenge that he knew would not go away. And so some things we have to accept. And again, it's our response to these challenges. But other things we can change. That's knowing the difference is important. And I was never perfect at that. But I think my life in sport helped me to understand that I could overcome challenges.
I love how you're pointing out that the challenges that we overcome can also impact the people around us, even just the way that we handle them.
Right. And we can be an
Um,
inspiration to those around us. And we may never know that people are watching us and they see our
yeah,
example. And as we advance in our careers, sometimes it's that silent example that impresses those that we're working for, that say, you know what? I really love his or her attitude. I love his or her work ethic. And
yeah.
I think they're ready for this next step in their career, whether it's a promotion or a leadership role. And then we can learn to become leaders ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So you were in a sport that you had individual contribution, then you had teams,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Can you tell us a moment where bringing in the right person or building the right team kind of changed the trajectory of?
I think as much as individuals are important, I think the mindset that we have as a team is important. And it's something that everyone has to buy into as a team. Um,
Okay, tell
my
us more
sports
about that.
Yeah, my sport is unique. It's a team competition, right? We won the team gold medal, but it's based solely on collective individual performances. I have no effect on my teammate's performance. When he's on the pommel
Yeah,
horse, I can't do anything about it. He's going to either perform his routine well or not. He can't help me in the competitive environment, in the competition at the Olympics, but I can help my teammate in the gym, in the workout environment. He can help me. And yet, while I'm competing with my teammate at the Olympic Games, I am simultaneously competing against my teammate for the individual medals that follow. And so I have to defeat my best friend in order to become the Olympic champion on the pommel horse. And yet, in the gym every day, he's helping me out. I'm helping him out. I'm giving him the very advice he might need to defeat me in the competition. He's giving me the
Yeah.
very advice that I might need to defeat him in the competition. And how do you do that? How can you come to that sort of an arrangement when you know what's at stake? Well, as a team, we knew that if we could win the team gold medal at the Olympic Games, for the rest of our lives, every one of us can say, I am an Olympic gold medalist, right? They put a gold medal around every member of the team when you stand on the victory stand. And we had conversations about that. If we pull together, we can all do this. We can all each be an Olympic champion. And so if I withhold information from my teammate because, oh, that might be what he needs to beat me, or if he does the same for me, what does it matter if I'm ninth place and he's 10th place, or he's ninth place and I'm 10th place? I'd rather have him be first place and me be second place because we both at least win medals, right?
Yeah.
And so we had that mature perspective about it. And so we had a brotherhood in that environment where we're helping each other out. Sometimes in a corporate culture, we can be so concerned with our personal agenda, our getting ahead personally, that we neglect helping our coworkers because we want to maybe get that promotion. And yet, for those that promote people, the managers of these people, they see teamwork. They notice when someone is contributing to the team or when they're holding something back. And so it's always better, A, because it's the right thing to do to help other people, but B, because it's better for your career if you're a team player. And if you know how to help the whole cause move forward, and that involves helping people to be their very best, even if that means they might become better than you at something for a period of time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that that is not something that I had really considered, that the dynamics of that group setting
Yeah.
would have to be you'd have to be so intentional about them in order to succeed as the whole group. What is a hard truth, though, about working on a team that you wish you had learned earlier?
I don't know. I always felt pretty collaborative with my teammates. These are my
That's
best friends in the
that's
gym. Yeah.
incredible, Peter.
We've always had that because we go to class together oftentimes. We go to our workouts together. We go out together, at night afterwards with our friends. And that was my peer group. So why would I want to do anything to damage those relationships? Stephen Covey, the author of the 7 Habits book, said life is not about accomplishing things, it's about building relationships. And I think if we all thought about the things that make our lives full, it's not the things that we did. It's the people that we shared our experiences with. So I love competing. I love the success that came. But what I miss most about my career being over in sport is the daily relationship I have with my buddies in the gym. I miss the grind. I miss being in
Yeah.
the gym. And so I really love to get on the phone and talk to my teammates or to meet with my teammates, to get together with them even now. And I'm an old guy. My college roommate, who was New York's best high school gymnast and a member of the national team, I talk to him every week. And we're in our mid 60s. And that
Yeah.
friendship was real and genuine. And I appreciate that. I think with regard to teamwork, the challenge is don't put your interest ahead of everybody else. When you help someone to accomplish something that's important to them, and that's going to help you individually. It's going to help you
Yeah.
personally. And so if my interest is more concerned with other people, my personal interest will be more enhanced, in my view.
Was there a leader either in your team or coach who kind of set that precedent?
I think there's some natural tendencies to kind of withhold that kind of support or help at first. I'll give you an example. So 3 of us, I said, went to the same university. We went to UCLA.
Yeah.
Two of them went to Nebraska and one went to Oklahoma. And the Nebraska guys and the UCLA guys, we were rivals in college. We were the top 2 programs in the country. I really wanted to be ahead of Jim Hartung and Scott Johnson. And Scott Johnson and Jim really wanted to be ahead of Mitch Gaylord and Tim Daggett and Peter Vidmar. And so we had those school rivalries that took place while we were in college. But what was interesting about that was that once the college season was done, that would flow into the national international season where we were not on the Nebraska team or the Oklahoma team or the UCLA team. We were on the United States team. And so then we would travel to compete at the world championships or in a dual meet against another country. And so that's where some of those little walls we built up started to crumble away because we realized that we were just all kids that loved gymnastics, that wanted to be the best we could be. And so why don't we just help each other out? And so for 4 years, the top 6 gymnasts in the United States were always the same 6 guys. And so we were always going to the world championships together and all the big events together. And so that meant that no one was kind of coming into our little group. And so at the time we got to the 1984 Olympic Games, we'd been competing together all over the world for years. And so we were a little band of brothers. We had already established that brotherhood and that fellowship, which I think aided our performance individually and therefore collectively as a team.
You mentioned your dad was a really big example to you. Were there any other mentors that really shaped
Oh
your
yeah, I mean,
life and your career?
shame on me for being this far into the interview and not mentioning my coach.
No, no, no,
So
this is the best part. This
yeah,
is the
so
best part.
my coach Makoto Sakamoto was the United States best gymnast for about 10 years in the 60s and early 70s. He finished his career at the Munich Olympic Games in 1972 and decided he wanted to start coaching and put a little ad out in the local paper that there was going to be tryouts for a little gymnastics program with the Culver City Department of Parks and Recreation, a suburb of Los Angeles. My dad saw the
That's where
article.
he started?
Yeah. So
Oh my gosh.
my dad saw the article, and so I said, "Yeah, I want to try it." So I started with this coach, this very famous gymnast, at least in the gymnastics world, and he started coaching me right from day one. And I stayed with him for 12 years. He made tremendous personal sacrifices for me, and he just taught me the value of hard work. There really is no substitute for hard work. I remember my very first national team training camp. I was a junior in high school. I made the U.S. men's team, and I went off to the University of Nebraska, the foam pits that we land in so you don't get hurt and all that. That didn't exist in my old gym, but it did at Nebraska. I was so thrilled to go there and just learn new tricks. And my coach said to me before I left, he says, "Pete, I don't care if you learn anything new at the camp. I really don't. But what I want you to do is I want you to return and look me in the eye and tell me that you were the hardest working gymnast on the team at the camp. That's all I
Wow.
want to know. Did you work harder than everybody there?" And I love my coach. So I thought, okay, I was absolutely committed. I was the first guy in, I was the last guy out, to the point that the national team coaches were like, "Peter, come on, let's get out of here now. It's time to leave." I
Yeah.
was always the last one out. And when we go out to dinner, after dinner, I'd sneak away and I'd do a bunch of more conditioning exercises while everybody else was relaxing. I just wanted to be able to be honest with my coach and say, yeah, I was the hardest working guy there. And so
Yeah.
he taught me the value of just work. But he also taught me commitment. He taught me how to keep my word, how to be consistent in my training, that your most important day in the gym is the day that you don't want to be there. Everybody works hard when they feel like working hard. Everybody works hard when
Yeah.
they're having a good day, when they're getting results, especially instant results. But the best that I was able to observe, figure out a way to work hard when they didn't feel like working hard. So whenever I was really dragging before the workout, walking into the gym thinking, I don't even want to start the day, I'd remember that thought. And I think, okay, so this is a day that's going to make a difference then. What are you going to do today? And I could turn a day that started out really poorly because I was so tired, and I could turn it into one of my best workouts of the week because I just changed my attitude. And my coach taught me those principles because that's the kind of athlete that he was. So there's no substitute for hard work. There's no substitute.
Yeah. What an incredible leader that could
He
bring
was
out the
amazing.
best
He was
in
amazing.
you.
He was-
And it sounds like from his example.
Yeah.
And I love that the best day to be at the gym is the day you don't want to be there. I think that that advice can be taken
Yeah.
across the board
Yeah.
to anything that people want to accomplish.
We're never going to be firing all cylinders every day. It just doesn't happen. So there'll be days that
Yes.
we're dragging our feet and we're tired. We'd rather not be there. What do you do on days like that? And I think it's those moments that help you to find the real strength in yourself. I found a quote yesterday. I'd never heard it before by Bob Marley, the famous reggae singer. He said this: "You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have." So sometimes we find ourselves backed into a corner, and the only way to get out of it is hard work. And that's when you discover what you're really made of. And I failed many times. Here I am dispensing advice, but I'm just telling you, there's many times that I did not rise to the occasion, and I would give up, and I was not what I could have been. So
Well, I just really appreciate you sharing your story. I think it is incredible to see what you've accomplished and all of the lessons that you've taken and been able to apply to other areas. And coming full circle, so now
Huh?
you're at Northern Trust.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just in closing, like how you got there? How do you made that decision to pivot?
Yeah. When I came home I spent 3 years in Australia with my church. And when I came back, I retired for a while. And I have a very good friend who works for that firm who just said, "Hey,
Mhm.
if you ever get bored, I have an idea for you." And
Yeah.
and at first I didn't think about it much. And then my wife told me I was bored. So she didn't say I was boring. And so I took him up on it. And I'm doing what I
Yeah.
wanted to do when I graduated from college.
Yeah.
I'm having a time of my life. I love helping people. And it's just something that I really enjoy. So,
That's incredible. Okay, we're gonna do a lightning round,
yeah.
if
Oh,
that's okay with you. All
yeah.
right, you ready?
Yep.
Best burger in Utah.
I love the Maui burger at Seven Brothers.
All right. Go to business book recommendation.
Seven Habits of Highly Effective People is a must read, I think, for many. I think The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard is a terrific read. And a book by the late Harvard professor Clay Christensen, How Will You Measure Your Life? Those are 3 books that I highly recommend.
I love Clay's book, and we will include this in the show notes.
Okay.
Okay, last question. Favorite decade of your life so far?
You know, life is meant to be enjoyed and lived. I'm going to say this decade because I expect to make it my best decade. I don't see any point in looking back saying, "Oh, the good old days were back in my 20s or in my 30s." Then all I'm telling myself is things can't get better. And I don't believe that.
Yeah.
We can always make our
Yeah.
lives better. So this decade is the best decade of my life. And I'm going to make the next decade even better.
I love it. Where can listeners follow you and your work?
I'm on LinkedIn and that's it. I love what I do. And I just love spending time with my grandkids and my kids. So I love to
Yeah.
exercise. So yeah.
Well, you've earned it. Peter Vidmar, thank you so much for joining us on Rainmakers.
Thank you. What a privilege.